Designer S. Charles Lee's motto was, "The show begins at the sidewalk." And I think the Los Angeles is a perfect example of that. The moment you step into the lobby of the Los Angeles Theater, you're transported into a French Baroque palace. You're in the Hall of Mirrors. This was such a stark contrast to what people were experiencing in their everyday lives. So for just a matter of sense, you could walk in and feel like you're in a palace. So the main lobby was certainly inspired by the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles, and a lot of the architecture is based on the French Baroque style, even though that was not the popular style in 1931. So while other theaters were being built in streamlined modern or Art Deco style, including S. Charles Lee's Academy Theater in Inglewood, the Los Angeles was a sharp departure from that, going for a very classical style. The great thing about movie palaces is their ability to transport you to another world or another time, and the Los Angeles does that in spades. You can walk into the Los Angeles Theater and completely forget that you're in the 1980s, 90s, or the 1930s when it was built. There were cost and time-saving steps taken in the Los Angeles Theater too. If you look at the wrought iron balconies in the lobby up on the second story, those wrought iron balconies are actually cast in plaster. So anything that the patron can touch and feel as they're walking in is real cast wrought iron railings, but everything that's up 2 stories high is just cast plaster, painted gold. This is theater. I mean, the whole, and maybe that's the other difference between a modern theater where you walk into a modern theater and the show is what's on screen or on stage. And back when they were building movie palaces, you walked in and the theater itself was part of the show. So it told a story, and it set a mood, and it created an environment. And so maybe in the 1930s, looking back and seeing French Baroque was that was the oddity, that was the theater, and that was the sort of crazy story that we were trying to tell at the time. I don't know. That's me talking now. That's not. But I do love the idea that if you put yourself in the time, the most exotic and romantic thing at the time was to go to China or to go to Egypt, or in this case to go to France. Mm-hmm. So that's where it transported you. When we're looking at a different time, especially a really depressed time, if you're in a really depressed time, you're looking for something better. So you're looking for an idealized future or an idealized past. But either way, they are a fantasy. And I've heard people refer to movie palace architecture in general as Hollywood style. You're basically, if you're doing something that's Spanish Revival, it's really Spanish Revival Hollywood style. Because it's still fantasy. You're not saying this is authentic Spanish or authentic Chinese or authentic Egyptian. You're saying this is the Hollywood storytelling fantasy version of whatever that architecture is. Mm-hmm. So even in the Los Angeles, I don't think there's anything that's a direct copy. It's really just sort of like the Hollywood set designer's imagination of what the Hall of Mirrors would be if it was this dimension. It's a fantasy, which fits right into S. Charles Lee's The Show Begins at the Sidewalk, which is one of the reasons that he rings so true to me as a designer, because as a designer, and I'm a designer too, as a designer, he tells stories with his design, and I really appreciate that. That's why I got into the film business, is so that I could tell stories with design. And he did it in standing architecture that, has lasted the ages.